So this is the original title card that John sent me for this episode. A character study of Amos, where you see the back of Amos's head and the face of John's favorite character, who did not win the poll because he wasn't even on it, Miller. I kind of love it that you took the time to make this, John, like as you took the time to make this as a joke, and I love it.
I kind of don't want to take it down, but I guess I have to, right?
Yeah, you kind of do.
Okay, hold on.
Okay, so with that, hi everybody and welcome. Welcome back to Here Be Dragon. I am your host, Stephen Stark. With me as always are my co-hosts, Nessie and John from guys, I'm going to actually ask you a question here in just a second, but also joining us is not regular but longtime friend of the show and frequent contributor, especially when it comes to the Expanse. The lovely.
I was on all the Expanse ones, right?
I think you have been on everything Expanse we've ever done. Yeah. So the science officer of the OPAS Legitimate Salvage, our ship, Courtney Mazza. Welcome back, Courtney, and thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, so family, I wanted to let you guys know that, first of all, the three of us, me and Nessie and John, are all wearing Star Wars t-shirts, and we did not plan it.
I didn't get the memo.
There was no memo. We all just happened to be wearing Star Wars.
I love you guys.
But also, John and Nessie have just really started their own independent channels going. So I wanted to give them a chance to plug what they're doing that's new on their own channels and talk about what's coming up. So Nessie, why don't you go first? Because you were the most recent startup.
Yeah, I had a live stream on Friday with two wonderful guests. Disputed Lands, Amanda, Crowfood's daughter, came in, and Shar from Share the Music. Both of them came in, and we had a wonderful discussion about Garth Greenhand. And we dug really deep. We found some new information, made some new connections. So that's on my channel, The Unspun Yarn. And upcoming, we'll be doing some mythology-focused content, looking at the mythos in modern media.
There you go. What do you got coming up next?
I haven't had anything planned yet, but some ideas that I have are looking forward to looking at the MCU, our superheroes as a modern version of mythological figures, and possibly the films Castaway and Oh Brother, Where Art Thou as allegories for Odysseus. And yeah, that's
So if you want your deep dive nerdy deconstruction, i.e. a yarn that gets unspun, Nessie's got what you're looking for. I was in the chat for that first live stream, and it was really, really good. Three very smart ladies talking about very interesting stuff. So John,
yes,
what do you got going on? What's going on over on your channel?
I have finally started doing something on a channel that's been dormant for a very long time, or I guess you have to have been doing something on it at all for it to be dormant. But anyway, I've started doing streams on my channel, John Webster Film, and it's going to be examinations of film and television. We're going to kind of not quite alternate. I'll probably lean more towards film, but there'll be some TV in there. This coming week, we're going to, Nessie and I are going to discuss the first season of HBO's Rome, which I've kind of wanted to do something on that for a while. And then the week after that, I'm going to give in to my love of Keira Knightley movies, and it's going to be Pride and Prejudice. And then we'll see where we go from there. And I just wanted a channel where I could talk about some of my favorite films and get people on to chat with me, and we'll dive deep into those, everything from the stories to the direction, acting, and stuff of that nature. So if you guys enjoy talking about movies, please stop by. A bunch of you already are. You came by for my solo birthday stream where I just talked about my love of movies in general for 2 hours,
That's
which was
great.
terrifying. But
Very brave.
thank you. I look forward to seeing you guys there, hopefully in the future.
All right. Well, cool. So Rome on Thursday live stream.
Yeah.
And live streams are really great right now with all the social isolation and quarantines and whatnot. I have found myself in more chats than I normally would. Okay, so we are here to talk about Amos, everybody's favorite character. But before we do get started, X Factor 04 says they have not finished the first season of The Expanse yet. I'm going to warn you now, we're going to go full spoilers, at least for everything that's up through the end of season 4, everything that's come out on TV for sure. I know one spoiler about Amos from future stuff, and I'm not going to talk about it, but I've been spoiled on one thing.
Well, X Factor 4 is clearly in the right place, though, because have you seen that profile picture? I mean,
right?
We're among friends.
Right. I mean, we're very nerdy, and we're glad to have you. And I would hate to say anything like, "Don't watch my content," but like, we are going to be doing spoilers, and if you are spoiler averse, here's your warning now. Here's your warning now. All right. Well, that having been said, Amos Burton. He is my favorite character in The Expanse, at least through 4 seasons of the show. He was not my favorite character after season 1, and maybe not even after season 2. But watching his season 3 arc really sort of solidified it for me. And
reading the churn?
Yeah, reading the churn helped a lot too. Spoilers for the churn in this as well, which is a short story about Amos's back.
It doesn't spoil the series, though. It just adds more depth.
Yes, absolutely.
I see. I'm sorry. Yeah, the last season of The Expanse, four episodes in. Yeah, I don't know that there is some pretty major spoilery stuff that we might get into towards the end for season 4 stuff, because he got an interesting arc in season 4 too.
I'm bad about spoilers.
I know you are, Courtney. That's why
John gets mad at me.
I've got my mouth.
You want to spoil us so badly.
Button, Courtney. I just muted you, and now I unmuted you, but I've got you on lockdown.
Oh no! He's never wielded the mute at me before. Oh!
All right. So let's get started. I love Amos to pieces, and I think there's a lot to dig into, but I'm going to at least ask the rest of the panel, what are your impressions of him as a character? And I'll start with our guest, if that's okay. Courtney.
My impressions of him as a character. Well, I guess I will start with the most controversial one. I know that a lot of people, especially who have just seen the show, feel like Amos, or suspect that Amos may have a difficulty connecting to people because he's autistic. That's a popular fan theory out there. But I feel like, based on what I've read, so one of the characteristics of children who are subjected to abuse, and if you've read the books, you know that Amos grew up in a stable, which was what they called a whorehouse in Baltimore. And he was thrown into prostitution early while his mother was still alive and working in that same stable with this woman called Lydia, who tried to comfort him, but maybe not in the most appropriate ways.
Right.
To say there were some boundary issues.
Yeah, and also did not ever shield him from danger or from abuse. But, that was their reality, and that was normal in their world. So a lot of kids who are brought up, my master's is cognitive development, cognitive psychology. And a lot of children who are brought up victims of abuse don't necessarily, it's not that they're incapable of connecting with people. It's that they choose not to. They actually become hyper aware of social cues because anything could be the next big blow to them. And so they become hyper aware of the cues that might give them a clue that the next big horror is coming. And I think that Amos is actually better at reading people than most people. He just chooses not to connect and he chooses not to trust because in his experience, even the people that were supposed to love him have been not necessarily trustworthy and at the very least willing to put him in compromising situations for their own survival. So I think Amos, sorry guys, I don't think that he's autistic. I think that he is actually very aware and very intelligent. And I think that he has just made a conscious choice not to connect with others because of his upbringing.
Right.
I agree. As someone who, I have an autistic daughter, Amos is and he's a character I've looked at pretty hard. He does not strike me as autistic. Okay, well, I'm going to bounce it over to, let's go with Nessie. Nessie, what do you think of Amos?
Amos is one of the most complex. He's very close to the top for me. I love him because of his complexity. You just peel a layer back and then you find something new. Seeing him react in different situations, seeing his range, so to speak, of I think he connects when he connects with a person. He connects fully, completely, 100%. It's like once that barrier is down, that's it for him. They're his ride or die. So I agree with you about the not being on the spectrum. It's very much a characteristic of anyone who has PTSD or PTSD traits. And when you're a young child and you just don't even have the tools to comprehend, and you're developing, and you're seeing how the adults around you are behaving, and you're just trying to survive, you revert to those survivalistic tendencies. So yes, Amos works on two different levels. I think he works on a basic level of survival at all times, and he incorporates that in his caring of others because he wants them to survive as well. So he is a survivor and a protector, and that's how I see him. And he's very intelligent, highly intelligent. He would not be where he is right now. Basically, he's a rocket engineer who came from with no education before he was able to pull himself out of the slums of Baltimore to where he is now. So that speaks very highly of what his intelligence is, just right there. So.
Right on. Man, there's going to be a lot of really great conversation. The chat is popping off on this too right now.
Yeah, and I'm going to let John have his turn.
Yeah. John, Amos, not your favorite character.
Yeah, and especially when I first started watching the show, I didn't really care for him because I thought that more than anything, he was an extremely volatile element in the team. And, he is even still, but we love him. So, it becomes perfectly fine. But I just didn't really have empathy for him at that early point. I kind of worried about what he was going to do. And it's funny how I've said this before, how that ends up shifting into you're worried about like you're sort of scared of Amos initially, and then you become scared for Amos as it goes on, because you see that he does care about other people. It's just he's the one that's willing to do the things that need to be done, at least as he sees it. And yeah, I mean, as far as the autistic thing goes, I don't have enough experience with autism, or and knowing people with that to actually say whether or not that would be the case. I mean, obviously, there's something that's not quite right with him, but whether that's a medical condition or just his experiences, that he's been through trauma, and so it's kind of altered the way he's able to deal with things. I lean more towards that. But yeah, it's fascinating watching how my view of Amos has changed from, he's the guy who initially says to Holden that he'll, it's been a while now since I've watched season 1, but that he won't hesitate to kill him, to that effect. And now towards the end, he's come to respect Holden, and they're like brothers, essentially. And so seeing how he's gotten to that point, I've sort of, my evaluation of Amos has grown so much, and seeing all of his different facets and the emotions that he's gone through. I've joked this whole time that, he's not everybody's favorite character, because I've been, I wanted to talk about Miller, but in all honesty, Amos is one of the most, he's probably, if you're looking at character study, he is probably the most fascinating character on the show, and he is one of the best characters written for television, period. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know how to boil down what I think about Amos, but that's the gist.
I think I understand what you're saying. Like, he doesn't have to be your favorite. And for a lot of people, he's not their favorite. People love Miller. People love Sharla, and rightly so. Those are fantastic characters as well. But I think everybody acknowledges that he is incredibly interesting, even if he's not your favorite, because a lot of times your favorite has to do with who you identify with most. And I don't identify with Amos the most, but he's just so incredibly interesting and layered, because in season 1, like, he, as you say, John, he's like a loose cannon. He's a wild card, and you don't know what he's going to do. By the time the end of season 3 comes around, you know exactly what he's going to do, who he is, what he's about, and the lengths to which he will go to protect those who are closest to him. So, which I think was a really excellent experience as a, I mean, I've only watched the show, I haven't read the books, but as a watcher of the show, what a fantastic journey I got to go on learning to understand him. And he's so incredibly different from me.
Right.
Yeah.
As the seasons go on, he starts talking about, every time he drops one of those little nuggets about his past, it's always in a scene that's very critical with another person, and it's very relatable to what's going on with that person at that time. So I think that's very important, that he has all these things in his past that makes him vulnerable at times when things are going on, and he pulls that past trauma out, and it helps us to understand and empathize with him, and makes it easier to relate to him, because you see these things that he's talking about, and how he behaves with other people, going through situations like Prax with his daughter. That really tugged at me, because he's been that child that had, I mean, if everybody gave up on him, he had no one but basically Lydia in his life to help him survive, to help pull him forward, not to give up on him as a human being. So for him to have that moment with Prax when he's talking about his daughter and not giving up on her, it just hits so hard that,
See, he totally can comprehend emotions. And if you guys don't mind, I would love to respond to what Nessie said originally about if he had grown up in a different situation. I mean, a lot of people see him as just your like dumb thug mechanic, but he's highly intelligent and he's highly intuitive. And there is a passage at the very beginning of The Churn, which is entirely about him, that is describing his namesake. But if you think about it as talking about him, it's so relevant. So if you don't mind if I read it, I would love to pull a quote from the text. Okay. It says, Burton's misfortune. Now, again, this wasn't him. This was someone that he stole his identity, but it applies to him. And this is why I think it's so relevant that this is the person that he identified with and took on his persona. Burton's misfortune was to be born where and when he was, in a city of scars and vice, in an age when the division in the popular mind was between living on government-funded basic support or having an actual profession and money of your own. To go from an unregistered birth, which Amos also had, such as his, to having any power and status at all was an achievement as profound as it was invisible. And I just feel like, I mean, he basically is like a robotics engineer. I mean, he's as smart as they could possibly come. He's just doesn't have the degree to go with it. He's not formally educated. It doesn't mean that he wasn't intelligent. The fact that he rose from the circumstances of his birth and became what he is today, where he got today, that he got out and became this successful individual. I mean, that is a testament to his bravery, to his intelligence, and a little bit to how ruthless he was capable of being. And I would argue that, the man whose identity he stole, he has actually surpassed. I mean, that man owned territory and owned people, including Amos in Baltimore. But the Amos that we know, originally Timmy, not only accomplished that, but then got out into the stars. So
I look at Amos as Timmy with an Amos mask. Amos Burton is the mask that Timmy wears for the rest of his life, and he has to wear that mask because that's the identity that he assumed to get away from his circumstances, and he's stuck with that for the rest of his life. So it is the mask that he wears over his inner self.
But also it says that, to the people that he owned, the fact that he had risen up from the lowest of the low was not an invitation, but a statement of his strength and improbability. So even though this man was subjecting people to the worst possible, I mean, like human slavery, they still idolized him because he had come from exactly where they were and he had achieved so much. So on some level, I think that Amos assuming his identity and wearing that mask, which I think you're 100% correct about, Ness, is, him actually kind of wanting to be more like this person that, essentially controlled his abuse in the beginning.
Well, a lot of children who come from abuse like that, they look at their abusers and they take the things from them that are strengths, the things that they admire out of them. And Amos is like one of the better outcomes. He didn't actually become his abuser. He took what he could. He took what he could. He took the best part of him, which was basically his identity, his strengths, his never give up attitude, and took that and did everything positive with it that he could. You know, he could have easily become an abuser himself, stepped into Amos Burton's shoes and in the stews of Baltimore and taken over the territory and started abusing the people underneath of him. And he chose not to do that. He chose to save his friend Eric. He chose to
did assume those roles.
Yeah. Right. So he made the choice. So he took what he could and he made his choice. And you know.
But I think especially as the sort of like third act, if you will, of the churn, the end part, he learns of, I'm not saying it's a good lesson, but it's a valuable lesson, and it teaches him. He learned that there is a brief moment in the books that is extremely violent and it's over very, very quickly. And he learns that violence can get him what he wants. And I don't know that that's hinted in the story as something that he had done in the past. You know, I don't know that, but
he was a big guy. He was always very physically capable. You know, he always had that potential for, to act. But when he does act, it's like, I'm going to do this once. I'm going to do this right. And I'm going to do it in such a way that I don't have to do it again. You know, that it's like all of his rage that he had as that 5-year-old little Timmy locked in a closet was unleashed in that one moment where he was in the situation where he exploded and destroyed his abuser. So, there was that.
But like that does mean that excuse me, from his youth, he obviously has a lot of trauma. He learns to turn to violence to answer his questions. He gets his fake identity, which Leaf points out that he actually didn't steal the identity himself. His friend Eric gave it to him.
Yes.
And he got off and he learned to be a robotics engineer in space, as Courtney points out. He was on the Canterbury as a mechanic. But so, in the first couple of episodes, obviously, you don't get a whole lot from anyone. But there is an Amos moment, I think it's at the end of the second episode, where Holden is trying to send out this message about who did the attack on the Canterbury. And Amos pulls out his pistol, points it at the back of Holden's head, looks over at Naomi and says, "Did I smoke him?"
Right.
And that's a moment that made me go, okay, I mean, I don't know what this guy's going to do. I can't tell. That started me down that's kind of the start of the journey with Amos. He doesn't have a whole lot to do before that point, other than I guess he's got that sort of like, if it was a bomb, we'd already be dead moment. But this is the moment that really lets you into his psyche in a way that, we hadn't seen up to that point.
Right.
But the fact that he looks to Naomi and asks her is a huge moment as well. And it's one of his defining characteristics, that he's always got to have that person who can't protect themselves, but that has a strong moral center to help him guide himself.
But is that just because he's tuned in and feels like he needs to protect them? Like, I mean, maybe he sees good in people and he just wants to save what's precious and pure about them. I don't know. Maybe I'm giving him more credit than he deserves, but I would like to believe that.
Yeah, I don't think you're giving him more credit than he deserves, if I'm being honest. I think that some people have said it in the chat already, that he can tell who has strong morality eventually. He values those people because I think part of his PTSD makes him such a creature of his id that he doesn't know how to respond with foresight, but he is smart enough to know that he needs to. So he, to some degree or other, and he even says maybe in later season something about it, but he outsources his morality to somebody else. Right. Like holding the gun to Holden's head. Amos is in that moment he's given up his agency in a lot of ways. He's given his agency to Naomi. And so I feel like he would be very disconnected from killing Holden in that moment. He's said as much to other people later. You know, when he's talking to the reporter lady, I can't remember her name, but he's like, "You expect me to feel bad that your cameraman died? I don't."
Yes.
And that's just him. He is very, I don't know. He's such a complicated character, which is why I'm glad we're digging into it. Yeah. I would love to understand whether or not, because he seems to have a very high-minded view of morality sometimes. Like, he definitely has the greater good in mind. And then he's very sort of tribalistic. But if you are outside his tribe, there is a chance you can fall on his bad side, especially if maybe you are like the people who are working for Mao. You know, they were a threat to everyone, but he's not necessarily. I think he only takes on the big problems because his tribe has chosen to take on the big problems, and he's taking care of them. Yeah. Does that make sense?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amos, left to his own devices, would probably have never engaged in any of the, quest for the protomolecule or what have you. He would have been very busy keeping his head down, going from one task to the next, surviving through the moment, and what is going to move him to the next, the next step, the next stage, the next job. He's living in the moment. It's a very, it's not a very, it doesn't look forward to what could, his life in 10 years. He's very in the moment. So I think he bases all of his decisions on being in the moment.
And he's protective of the people that he loves. So, you're either with me or against me. I mean, it's very much that like crime syndicate Baltimore mentality where
he is an ultimate practical person. I guess he's ultimately practical. So if doing something is going to benefit or keep his people safe, okay, he's the guy. He is that guy that'll take care of it.
Oh,
and not lose any sleep.
Best quote from the whole show so far. Just, I am that guy. Most obvious quote ever in television history, and I don't care. I don't care if you can see it coming from a mile away. It just fits so good. Okay, so
yes, dear.
John, I haven't heard from you in a little bit.
Well, no, because you guys were talking about the churn, and I have not actually read it, so
it's very good.
I tried to make you.
I know. I have no one to blame but myself.
But anyway, so we're kind of into the early part of what we're shown on screen for Amos, though. And you know what? Let's just take a moment and all acknowledge that there is a great deal of thirst for Wes Chatham.
Yes, I have to admit it.
Y'all know I'm a
And
straight man,
you know
but
what?
that is a sexy, sexy dude. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Mhm.
he's
Okay, I'm
his
not sorry.
own cold
One of the
hottie.
best
I've
decisions.
seen him in real life. That man is adorable, like on camera and off. He's charming. His wife is also beautiful and lovely. I respect her enough to not have actually tried to throw myself at her husband, but
Yeah, one of the best decisions that they made in the show was probably to cast Wes Chatham in that role, because Amos, as the from a book character, does not
I was
look
just about to
like
say,
Wes at all. He's
not at
aging.
all.
Yeah, he's in his middle ages.
Okay. Do you guys want
But
to see?
even before that, there's like a direct quote that says that let me find it. Not
He's got
in
some
you.
mileage on him. Let's just put it that way. He's
that
got
he
some
would just
mileage.
he would never be a pretty. He was not a pretty boy. He would never be a pretty man.
Okay.
And
Sorry.
as he,
Go ahead.
All right, go ahead, John.
No, I was just gonna say I almost catered to those who have the thirst for Amos, and this was almost the image I used for the title card. Let me show you guys.
Oh, please.
I mean, I have the thirst for Wes, not for Amos. I don't think even if he looked like Wes that I could date Amos, but in the books, especially as he ages, he's like balding, he's older, he's got a little bit of a pot belly. I mean, there's nothing hot about him, but Wes, great. Oh my goodness. Please. Just put more of him on TV. I have criticized television shows in the past for just like hiring hot actors and not making the character true to who I picture in my head. But
yeah,
thank you.
I saw him in
thank
the
you
show.
for Wes.
Right.
Yeah, I saw him in The Unit, and let me tell you,
I know.
it's
no
and
complaints
he's
here.
just as hot in real life. Like it's not Photoshop. That man is beautiful.
Yeah, I would let him spoon me all night. I would even be the small spoon.
Of course, we start talking about thirst, and that's when Bernie comes into the chat.
I mean, it's very on brand for her.
Love you, Bert.
love you, Bernie.
But okay, so we've acknowledged the thirst. We've acknowledged he is in fact our murder snuggles.
Totally.
But yeah, I guess we can move on through. Let's just keep talking about him as we watch him evolve through season 1. Again, I think he has that moment where he might shoot Holden. Earlier in that same episode, he's telling Holden he doesn't know if he should or shouldn't kill him, and then he's like, "Can you pass me that wrench?" So like, and we've talked about his id being near the surface. Like, he is a very in the moment type of character. I need that wrench. Can you pass me the wrench? Right now, we're talking about whether or not I should kill you, and I don't have a filter.
But I'm going to keep on doing what I'm doing. We're going to stay on mission here.
I feel like that's kind of like a northeastern thing, though, like not to have a filter. I'm guilty of that myself.
Yeah, but like, there's a point where Courtney doesn't say,
well, I mean, even
you.
without a filter, I have no intention of killing anyone.
Right.
I still have a moral compass, and I still have no desire to hurt anyone. But the lack of, that like shiny veneer is real to Baltimore. It's real to New Jersey, where I come from. And so, he just happened he has no filter, and also, was not raised to think that killing people is wrong. As a matter of fact, his first murder was very early in his life.
Yep. And led to him getting out of the worst situation, or like that terrible situation that he grew up in.
Yeah. So, I mean, he wasn't even punished for it.
It was rewarded.
Turned out to be one of the best things he ever did.
I mean, not that, I can't remember the other Burton's actual first name. It wasn't Amos. But the actual crime boss, Burton, was a terrible person, but like, what does
it was Amos.
Yes.
He took on his full name and identity. Eric
I
had
was
created...
under the impression that Amos was the name of the new identity, and that Burton, Timmy's employer,
Amos
Burton, had a different name than Amos.
Was the crime boss. And because he had that level of power, Timmy's friend Eric created him a kind of like off the grid, credible identity, and then
a bug out
Timmy assumed that identity when he got off of Earth.
Basically, when he saved Eric, Eric was able to turn around and gift him with Burton's bug out identity, and his fun, his get off the planet card, so to speak. If he ever had to bug out for whatever reason, he had that.
It was Burton's plan B, and Timmy assumed that identity and benefited from it.
Yes. So him actually making the right decision, which was to save Eric, was rewarded, as opposed to the actual violence, which was the means to save Eric, but saving
Burton
Eric.
hired him to kill his own friend. He chose not to. Eric rewarded him with Burton's identity.
Right.
Okay, well, again, I was under the impression that the mob boss was not called Amos.
No, he was. That was his name. And he had a whole, get out of jail free identity set up through his employee, Timmy's friend Eric, and if you remember in was it season 3 where the reporters are talking to everyone about their their backstory, their background, the reporter came to him and asked him, there was this guy from Baltimore, this crime guy from X number of years ago, 20 years ago. His name was Amos Burton too, but that's you. That guy, your the ages didn't line up, so that can't be you. But are you related to him, or is he some relative of yours? And he's like,
Stop asking questions, lady.
Stop asking questions.
See, I felt watching that like that was a nice bit of setup for adding to the mystery and wondering. Of course, now you guys have blown the lid off of that, so no more mystery. But
it's not a spoiler; it just adds to his depth.
Okay. But seeing, and now I want to go ahead and read it. So.
You should.
Well, I've been nagging you for how long? I mean, if you're finally going to listen to me just so I don't spoil you.
I know. We'll have to see if I can carve out the time. They're awfully busy these days.
Are you home on quarantine too?
There's so much going on. I mean, God.
You can read it to Sam.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that really strikes me about him as a character, though, is that dichotomy that comes with the fact that he is so not immoral, but like amoral in and of himself. He is extremely violent. He has no remorse about his violence when he has to resort to it, which makes him feel like, if you'll excuse the Dungeons and Dragons parlance, he feels like a chaotic, evil character sometimes. But then he is also so strongly attaches himself to somebody with strong morality, especially somebody like Naomi early on, and I would say Naomi is a chaotic good character. She always wants to do what's right, but she was more than willing to break the rules to achieve a solution that is good for everyone. Doing the right thing, even if she has to kill everyone in the room to do it, which makes me feel like Amos is maybe actually a chaotic neutral character, which is one of the hardest alignment ideas to ever write a character for. I don't know if I'm talking over a lot of y'all's heads with this Dungeons and Dragons alignment talk, but chaotic neutral as an alignment is very hard to get right. Some people just play the cackling madman, and that falls very short. Or the person that just wanders around doing random for random's sake. But I see Voice of Reason. Dan agrees with me. So, which is probably part of why I gravitate to him. I mean, we all have our neuroses. We all have our problems. We've all talked about it in the past. And Amos is a character that has that, and that becomes maybe one of his more identifiable qualities that becomes relatable. Because we've all had our traumas. We've all not known what the right thing was to do and wanted to look to someone else to help us find our way.
Yeah. One of the most interesting things about Amos for me is that it'd be one thing if he had just fallen in with good people and that was influencing him, but he chooses to attach himself to people that, as we've said, have a strong, that he sees as having a strong moral compass. And that's incredibly interesting to me, that he makes that conscious choice to first it's Naomi, and then when he feels that Naomi has made a choice that doesn't align with that, he ends up, aligning himself, following Holden's lead because he trusts Holden and feels that he is someone who's going to at least try to do the right thing. And yeah, I mean, that's just one of the most fascinating elements of his character for me. As dangerous as he can be, he's making those choices to try and stay on the good side.
Right. He might dance with the devil, but he tries to stay on the side of the angels.
He does, but he wasn't exposed to it. I mean, I was fortunate to have two parents who loved me, who taught me the difference between good and wrong, and he did not have that. So, I mean, he doesn't even know. He just knows about survival. So when he encounters someone who he sees as having an actual understanding of the difference between good and evil, he tries really hard to learn from that person, which tells me that, he is an intuitive person, that he does want to grow. He just hasn't figured it out yet.
I'm going to address some people are saying they don't feel like Amos is chaotic. Again, from somebody who has played a lot of D&D over the years, the chaotic does not mean random or unpredictable. Even chaotic is the inverse of the law and chaos axis. So it's not about being random. It's about conforming to social norms in a lot of ways. So a chaotic person is willing to break the law, to bend the rules, to ignore guidelines and things like that. That are imposed on a social level. So that's why I feel like he's chaotic neutral, because he has zero regard for like the chain of command, for though that generator belongs to our people and you can't have it. He doesn't go for any of that type of thing. He does what he's going to do, period.
Right. Yep.
Sorry, Stephen, I was not laughing at you, but Anna just made a hilarious comment that I
I'm just
could
laughing
not
at
help
myself.
but react to.
I'm just laughing at myself because I had no idea this was a D&D thing. I just, as far as I knew, it was an online Twitter thing.
Oh no, it's from
No.
Dungeons and Dragons way back when, my man, way back.
I'm getting educated now too. This is great.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, just as a side note, me and Dan are going to be having an interesting conversation on Twitter directly after this stream. You're a game developer. That's awesome. I have an idea for a board game. But
You're
I
speaking
digress.
his love language.
So go ahead, Nessie.
Oh, no, you go ahead, Stephen.
I was just going to try to move the conversation along. If you've got something, please go ahead.
I was just going to talk about, he has his guiding stars, and we could talk about his relationships with, Prax in season 2 and Anna in season 3, and how both of those people really move his character development along.
Yeah, okay. I'm down for that because by my estimation, it goes from Naomi to Holden and it stays with Holden, but he also incorporates Prax. He also incorporates Anna. Yeah.
Right. When he's separated, especially when he's separated from the group, and he's with either Prax or Anna, they are surrogate guiding stars for him.
Right on.
Yeah. But definitely season 4, it's Holden the whole way.
Yeah. Well, and again,
and I feel like their relationship sort of ascends to brotherhood by that point, so it becomes even stronger.
Right. Very much so. He's gone from I'd be willing to space the guy, if Naomi looks at him sideways and not miss a wink about it, to that's my brother and you don't step on him or I will end you. So.
Yeah. But then you're right, that progression of that relationship with Holden is really one of I kind of love it. There's a part where I can't remember what he does, but Amos does something and Holden's like, I wish you'd have asked me first. And he's like, sorry, boss. He's like, it's okay. But that's a very sort of human, very human interaction between two people who care about each other,
That is the kind of stuff that I just love, because especially with a character like Amos, because that's a type of person that you're not expecting to follow along and get that kind of and see that kind of relationship between him and somebody else on the show where they're that close. There's always been something about that found brother or found sibling relationship that has always been really appealing to me. There's a very similar relationship on The Walking Dead, which is between Rick and I'm so focused on The Expanse. Daryl. They're Rick and Daryl, where they start off the show at odds, and then starting around season 3, they become like brothers, and that bond just kind of strengthens more and more over the course of the show. And there's something so endearing about that people who are at odds can get that close and trust each other that much.
Yeah, it's really nice to see that type of developing relationship on a show, especially, and The Expanse does this in a lot of ways, but it's a relationship between two grown men.
Yeah.
But it's a loving and caring relationship, which is not something we get a lot of in media. We don't get. There's that whole ribbing and we're friends and we're like brothers, but seeing it on screen in a dramatic type of show, in a situation, and the way they become so casual with each other, I love it.
Yeah. Just seeing two men be vulnerable with one another.
Mm-hmm.
It's very real, Excellent writing.
I agree. And Pedar points out that conversation comes from right after Amos kicks the film crew out the airlock. Yeah.
They're his message in a bottle, so to speak.
Right. Oh crap! I was going to say something and I just lost it. Anyway, I do love that relationship with Holden, but we also have Prax, and I think Anna is worth talking about as a character that influences him as well. Before we even get into season 4 stuff, but first, we've been going for about an hour, y'all. So again, we're gonna take a short hop here to do the mid roll. This is the part of the show where I go, oh yeah, please like and subscribe. It helps. It helps the stream be seen. Please subscribe to the channel. I figure most of you already are, but I say it for those who will watch later. The channel grows a little bit every week, a little by little, and I'm super happy for all of you that do come out live to join us. I'm thankful for everybody who watches it later. But if you're watching this after the fact, you should join us on Sunday afternoons live because the chat is a lot of fun to be a part of. Also,
yeah, I think it's one of my my only regret about actually being on these streams is that I don't get to take part in the chat, because those first couple of weeks were quite a lot of fun. I mean, the people in the chat are great, so definitely join up.
Yeah, I feel kind of bad that I have been getting distracted by the chat. And while some of you have been making amazing, insightful observations, my face has been cracking up because I am listening to our friends in the chat and I am not laughing at you, I swear. Some of these comments are killing me tonight.
Yeah.
And it's the only when you guys talk that I actually have the time to look down at my phone and read the comments. And some of them are just so hilarious. I can't help but chortle. And then I feel bad after the fact that, like, it looks like I'm laughing at Steven being smart on screen, which I would never do. I love you being smart on screen. I'm laughing at Anna talking. I won't bring down the tone.
Funny people.
Yes, I love our friends that turn out to support us. I'm so appreciative. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Good stuff. It's good stuff.
Yeah, the chat's usually the best part of a lot of streams.
It is, and it's why I turn into other people's streams. But I don't want to completely miss out on it while I'm doing the actual streaming. So thank you for humoring me when my facial expressions do not match what you're actually talking about.
Look, live streaming is its own format, its own creature, which means occasionally there's lulls in the conversation for a moment, and occasionally you're not paying attention because you're reading the chat because the chat's too good. It happens to all.
Good.
It's just
good. Our friends are fun.
Yes, indeed. I also going to shout out. Ridiculous Ed Tollett, #1 patron in the land. My man coming through all the time, in the chat all the time. We love you, brother. Thanks for everything you do. That being said, if you want to, if you're enjoying this and you want to join the Patreon, the link is down in the description. Also down in the description are a whole lot of other links for a whole lot of other great content. You can follow any of us on Twitter. All those links are down in the description. Also have links to Nessie's and John's channels, which they're starting to produce content, and it's good stuff from smart people. So go look at that. Our upcoming schedule. So next week, I'm trying to get together a guest for an I Know That Nerd. I have not had any. I've had a couple of soft maybes, but I have not gotten a hard yes from anyone yet. So I'm not actually 100% sure what's going to happen next week. We may end up calling an audible and doing a movie review or something instead. So I'm not sure about that. But then the next week, April 19th, this channel is doing something it's never done before. We're covering something from A Song of Ice and Fire. I know, right? Totally mind-blowing. But we will be talking about my favorite character George has ever written, and that is Sir Duncan the Tall.
Dunk and egg.
We will be discussing some Dunk and Egg, which I'm totally here for. And the week after that, John and I are talking about perhaps doing another movie review. It's going to depend on who I can get for an I Know That Nerd. But yeah, so hopefully next week I Know That Nerd, then Dunk and Egg, then retro review. And if you guys have suggestions for a retro review, you can go ahead and just toss them in the chat. I'll write a few of these down. Actually, I'm going to ask one of my co-hosts to write it down because I don't know if you can tell, but I injured my hand.
Oh.
Yeah, so I have small dogs, and last night, was going around turning off lights and stuff to go to bed. And I turned around and stepped on one of my puppy's foot, and it just, and so then you do that thing where you're trying not to step on them again as they're scrambling to get out of the way. And so I'm like falling over my lazy boy, and I caught my finger, my pinky on my right hand, and yes, I'm right-handed, and I wrenched it sideways on the end table, and it hurts a whole bunch a lot. So if people can somebody write down these suggestions. Galaxy Quest, Spaceballs is in there, I see as well. Both of those are good choices, actually.
Can I just
Everybody's
I know that nerd? If you
up
have
my
not
bedside?
agreed to do it, it is so much fun. And I know it seems really scary because basically Steven just fires random questions at you, but he's there with you the whole time and he will never do anything to make you uncomfortable. He's like the best friend. Trust me, it's worth doing. He is wonderful, and whatever comes out of it, yeah, I mean, you might be a little awkward in the beginning, but by the end, you are having a conversation with someone you love that just highlights the things that he loves about you. So please say yes.
Oh, that is
Do
so.
I know that nerd? It's fun.
So sweet. Thank you, Courtney. And to answer Jess's question, yes, only movies, because the whole point of the retro review is that we can watch it and make notes while we watch it, and it's not something we have to do a whole lot of cramming for. One movie that that's a classic that we've seen before, so like there's a lot of stuff you can write about movies you love without having to rewatch, but then when you rewatch it with taking notes, it just is something that we can get to very easily and it's not a huge time sink. Because let's face it, when we're trying to cover television shows, sometimes we're trying to watch an entire season of television in a week. And that's not always easy. So, yeah. Movies only, please. I mean, you're free to recommend us to cover whatever you want. But for our retro reviews, we are just trying to cover, like, nerd culture classics.
Yeah, and it's not another opportunity for me to promote my own channel, but I will be actually be discussing some older television shows, and like I said before, this coming week we're going to be talking about Rome, and I'll be doing that with Nessie, and it's going to be a whole lot of fun. So I'll be doing some stuff in the future like that. So
I'm trying to get him to do Outlander, friends.
I bet Outlander's coming.
I do love those books. You know, I love being the resident book nerd. It's kind of my role here.
People are sending trolling things now. Howard the Duck, and then what was it? He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
Oh, you missed the most trolly of all.
Hey, you know what, Stephen? If you're not going to do Masters of the Universe, I will.
I mean, you're more than welcome to it. Rocky Horror Picture Show. Again, I don't know that that's a nerd. I don't know that any of the last 3 movies I just mentioned are nerd culture classics.
Hey, do we have mods here who can link Nessie and John's channels, or can you link them at the bottom?
Links are in the description.
And
perfect.
Bernie did put up.
People were asking, so I'm just making sure that we have access to them for anyone who is curious.
No, good call. I can link them myself if I need to. Bernie's taking care of it.
Look at her go.
Bernie's on it.
Thank you so much, Bernie.
Thank you,
Bernie.
Bernie.
You're the man. You're not a man, but you are the man. Ooh, Army of Darkness. Good choice. I love that movie. It's so funny. Okay, so getting back now to Amos. Let's talk about Amos and Prax and that relationship that develops between the two of them. Who wants to go first? Nessie?
I think it's John's turn to talk first.
Okay, John, you want to talk about?
He's been real quiet.
We have been talking over him.
Yeah. It's. I'm trying to think because, well, no, I'd actually like Nessie this because the Prax Amos relationship, I like it, but I don't know if I am. You guys talk so eloquently about that relationship. Let me speak up first about the next thing, but I want to cede the floor to you guys on the Prax thing because you guys are better about talking about that relationship than I am, I think.
Okay.
Do you want to go, Ness, or?
Sure, I'll go. I just didn't want to monopolize the conversation. So
I have a tendency to do that.
Yeah. Prax is he's a driven man. He has one mission to accomplish, and that is to find and save his daughter. And Amos he's down for that because, nobody would stand up and save him. He sees in Prax that ideal of just a father's love that he never experienced. And to see him just be so consumed by his daughter's health and welfare and benefit and where is she, and to see him torn so completely asunder by her loss. Amos has no choice, in the matter of, whether he knows this is a good guy, because he has that little boy in his heart that nobody ever went to bat for. Nobody would ever have moved heaven and earth to find him.
Even the women who raised him and loved him, his mother and her friend Lydia, they never tried to keep him out of harm's way. They never tried to save him. Sorry, please.
No, yeah, that's perfectly fine. But just you see that he respects him and he looks up to him and he sees that in him as just something he never ever had. And so it's just, he knows him to be a good person, and someone that, he wished he had in his life when he was. So him following him and going, using him as a guiding star just makes perfect sense to me, because he needed a father and he never had one. So Prax's love for his child and his fatherhood just appeals to him so much. So that's what I have to say.
I know this is off topic, but any chance to just talk briefly about how great this is. That entire like initial episode with Prax, where he's on the ship and sort of the horrifying reality of what's done to all
Right.
those people. That's just such an amazingly a wonderfully well crafted episode, and it becomes just as traumatic for the viewer. And to try and tie in, I think that does sort of set up the relationship between those two, because your emotions are basically laid bare for this man. And yeah, no, it's not strictly tied to the Amos relationship, but every time I think about Prax, I just keep going back to how we begin with the character, and it's one of the things that the show is so good at about is making you be able to empathize with these characters. And yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but I just wanted to chime in about that and that opening situation we find him in.
Cool.
But yeah, the relationship between those two, one of the things I always go back to is when they're on oh my god, what's the planet? Where are they? Ganymede. When they're back on Ganymede, it's such a beautiful mirror of the talk that Amos gives to the spy in season 1, the churn, where he talks about the churn, and then it comes back around where Prax talks to Amos about what's, you guys know, when they're talking about the plant life. And
what are you asking though?
What's the word he uses?
Oh, are you talking to cascade?
The cascade.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that sort of that flip from in the first season to the second season, and it's such a great moment between those two, and it places Amos on.
And it's valid science, because think about all the things that go into Darwinism, creationism, like all of the things that we need on this planet to work in sync for a species to evolve or a plant to thrive. And all it takes is one little thing, the butterfly effect, one little thing, and everything can fall apart. And if you are out in space and you're trying to recreate all the factors that we don't even think about on Earth, I mean, if the bumblebees go extinct, the entire human species is screwed. I hate to use the term, but
which of course is
with the cascade. Like once you realize what's going on, it's already too late.
Yes. Good point, John. Continue.
And of course, it's an analogy for the entire species as well, with everybody needs to work in sync together. And of course, in this story, in this universe, they're not. And so is it too late, or are they going to be able to put the pieces back together and survive? So yeah, that's a whole fascinating conversation. And I love that that's sort of the beginning of them growing close as characters. It's a fascinating relationship.
But
go ahead.
That relationship only takes place because of the nature of what Prax is trying to do, i.e. save a kid, which is a very Amos, which is the thing that's going to motivate Amos a lot of the time. And the fact that he is also, Amos understands that the world they live in is a violent place, and occasionally violence is is needed in this sort of wild west of space in order to keep yourself and your people you care about safe, and to oppose the forces of people who are tyrannical or authoritarian, or just taking advantage of other people for their own benefit, the way Mao and all those people that work for him are doing. So I think those two factors figure quite heavily into the reason Amos chooses to care about Prax at all. Prax is one of those people that needs protecting, but he is somebody who is on a mission to save a child.
Also, and this is great because part of the reason I wanted you guys to hit the lead is because it's been a little while now since I watched the first 3 seasons, since my mind switched over to season 4 while we were doing that. So now stuff is coming back. The really great thing about that relationship, because it's not just another person that Amos is latching onto as a moral compass. Amos, in turn, is guiding Prax, because Prax has these moments of weakness where he almost doesn't. It says he almost doesn't want to find his daughter because he's afraid of what he'll find, and he says things that Amos. I don't remember the exact dialogue, but Amos is saying something to the effect of, you want me to say that's okay for you to feel that way? It's not, that type of thing. So he's guiding this person in the way that he feels he needs to be guided. And that's such a beautiful reciprocal relationship.
Yes. And John, relating all the way back to Amos's childhood and his friendship with Eric, Eric is constantly like wanting to do what's best for himself, and yet he is paralyzed by fear to take that next step. Like, Eric obviously created this identity for the real Amos Burton, and he could have done it for himself, and he dreams of going off into space and finding new opportunities, but he is paralyzed by the fear of not actually being able to put himself out there like that. And personally, I can relate to that. I don't know, maybe someone of you can relate to that as well. But Amos has always been the friend that's like, why don't you just do this? Why don't you just use the skills that you have? Instead of using them to help someone else, why don't you use them to achieve your own goals? Amos is so good at that. So the same way that Amos seeks that moral compass in other characters, he is also actually capable of being that friend for the people that he cares about. And I love that you highlighted that. So thank you, John, for bringing that to light.
Right on. Anybody else got anything to say about Prax with Amos? Okay, well then I'll take this opportunity. There are a couple of beats in the development of that relationship that really speak to me. And we've already touched on a couple of them, but there's one where Prax, and this I think is on Io, after they've been to Ganymede and now they're in Io, and there's a conversation about growing a watermelon in a box, and then they get to the bottom and Prax comes around the corner and he just starts slinging lead, and Amos grabs him and it says, take cover, then shoot. Still doing the mother hen thing to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also like Prax comes out with they fought back, they made a choice, and you can see it on Wes Chatham's face, because he's a fantastic actor.
Oh, he is.
In that moment, Amos is doing some mental math saying, I don't like where you're going, which leads to that fantastic, I am that guy moment, which is maybe it's one of the best moments in the whole show. I think we all can agree, just from a brief snippet.
And it's tremendous character development for him, because from the beginning he has sought other people for whom, you know, he defers to other people. He looks to Naomi to tell him what's right. But in this moment with Prax, he says, I know better than you what's right. And I can help protect you from where I know this road leads. Because, you know, in Amos's character development, he had his first kill young, and it, you know, it might have got him where he was going in the long run, but it wasn't necessarily good for him morally. And so we can now see him trying to say to Prax, like, I don't want you to have to go there. I want to save you from that. And I love that he's come that far.
But like, it just goes to show you that he is, we were talking earlier in the stream, that he is aware of people, and he is aware of, he can read people extremely well. And he could read.
I think so.
Prax was reaching that point, and Amos did what he did what he knew he could do, because Amos is not going to lose a wink of sleep over killing Dr. Strickland, but it would haunt Prax for the rest of his life.
Yes, and Amos is emotionally intelligent enough to see that. I don't understand why I mean, maybe, you know, people who haven't read or whatever, but I don't understand why so many fans don't see that. He actually is highly emotionally intelligent.
He cares very deeply for some people. He doesn't like wear his heart on his sleeve, but that doesn't mean he doesn't care, and care very deeply.
He cared
and it
enough
doesn't mean he doesn't assess people and situations in some ways more rapidly maybe than the rest of us, because he can take one look at someone and decide, you know, this person deserves to die. And I don't know that I would make that same call, but he really, you know, I mean, we all know when he walked in on the doctor who had been experimenting on children and doing horrible things, nobody else was willing to just put a bullet in a doctor's brain. And Amos was like, psh, done. Yeah. No qualms about it. But is that because he is incapable of associating emotion with another human being, or is it because he actually was able to assess that human and understand that that man was incapable of reform? I mean, I don't know. I think I would like to believe that Amos has a fairly decent view of humanity, and that maybe he made the best choice. You know, one of the earliest choices that Amos makes when he is in the churn, in the books, when he is very young, he is put in a situation where he's hired to basically collect a debt from a man. And his employer, who is named Amos Burton, asks him to get whatever he can out of this person. And Timmy, who becomes Amos that we know, basically determines that he's never going to get a cent out of this guy, because there's no amount of money that this man will ever come into contact with that he won't put straight up his nose, that he won't blow. And so Amos decides that the best thing he can get out of this man is to send a message to other people that owe the true Amos at this point money. And that's what he can get out of him. He can make his death mean something. And by killing him, he can send a message that says, you know, don't owe the real Amos Burton money. And, you know, at the first read, you're kind of like, wow, this guy is cold. But the second read, the third read, the fourth read, you're like, maybe, maybe he's actually really good at sizing up the situation. And I, at this point, feel like Amos is really good at sizing up the situation. That scientist was just going to continue to abuse more children. And we learn later on that he's had something done to his brain where he has no compassion left, where he literally is willing to do whatever it takes to push the experiment forward. And he's also intelligent enough to convince others that what he's doing is correct. So Amos sized that up in 10 seconds flat, but made an assessment and put a bullet in his brain. Was he wrong? I don't know that I think so.
I thought Miller killed this scientist.
Oh.
Yeah.
I guess I was thinking about the guy where and I'm probably more thinking about the books, but I guess I was thinking about the guy where Amos said, "I am that guy." But
yeah. Okay, so that's Dr. Strickland. There was that character that had his mind kind of wiped with the magnetic thing. That character was killed by Miller.
Well, I thought Dr. Strickland also had that done, but
it's possible.
At least not in the show. I don't think that they say that. It's entirely possible.
I could be wrong. I'm sorry, guys. I've watched and I've been really deep in a Wheel of Time reread through this whole quarantine, so I am a little disconnected. I hope you're enjoying it.
But
I am. I love it.
Padar did bring up something that did happen between Amos and that scientist whose name I can't think of it right now, but compared him to a pedophile.
Yeah.
About how you won't talk to him, but then you show him pictures or whatever and he'll start to talk. And he was absolutely right too.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, Amos is familiar with the worst of humanity and he can recognize it quickly without having to feel empathy for the type of people that don't necessarily deserve it.
But
his predator radar is very strong. So, I mean, he had to learn that.
Yes, and you have to learn that at an early age if you are a victim.
I will say, coming back around to the relationship between Amos and Prax, I think, the big line is, "I am that guy," but I think my favorite part of that scene is the part of that line which is, "You're not that guy," because it just shows such his empathy for Prax and that he doesn't want him to live with this, and that's just the gut punch for me right there. And then of course it leads into the fact that he is the one who can do that, but he's taking that on himself for Prax. And also because it's something that he feels needs to be done, but he's making sure that he's the one that does it so his friend doesn't have to live with that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Agreed. Love it. Anybody want to talk about Amos and Anna or some fourth season stuff? I mean, we've got at least 30 minutes left. Gosh, what a fantastic character he is to be able to just sit here and riff. We've been at it for an hour and a half now. It's
so much.
Yeah. I've got to be honest. Nessie and John have been working really hard on their own channels. I am not trying to promote this to our friends here, but I've been teaching remotely through all of this crazy quarantine-ness. And so I didn't even have time to do the research that I normally would love to do for you guys. So I'm basically flying by the seat of my pants right now because my channel is for my children in my class. And so when we talk season by season, it all kinds of runs together for me, but I'm
you're doing great.
Whatever.
You're doing great, Courtney. Like none of us did any lying. We're all going to have factual errors throughout this thing, but we'll cover each other.
Well, Courtney, I think you were correct. Book canon, because they were talking about the history of Dr. Strickland, and how he left the university and joined up with Mal Crick. So
yes,
you were correct in that, but it's not.
He did have the mind wipe, but not in the show.
It wasn't mentioned.
Cover it, although
sorry, it all kind of blends together.
In the show, the gist seems to be that he's just a really awful person.
Yeah.
Well, he's an awful person, but actually, Strickland starts out, he's got like a disabled mom, and we sympathize with him a little bit. He's just
about the show.
Okay.
No, but he was willing to sacrifice the thing that makes him human to advance his research. So
he was, but it's also because it takes away all of the pain and regret and remorse that he's been living with his entire life, which I don't know, if somebody could wave a magnet over your head and take away everything that was sad in your life.
But I will
experiment on children.
Well, I don't think he signed up thinking he was going to experiment on children. I think he signed up thinking he was going to be a better scientist and not be burdened with the guilt of his mom's slow demise.
Yeah, he wasn't burdened, but he certainly got burdened. Am I right? Am I right?
Hey.
No, I will say that.
Good one.
But the really haunting thing about that whole scenario is I can go on and on about how despicable of a person Strickland was, but the thing that's really terrifying is that we're shown Mao as being the guy who we think, well, he seems to have at least a little bit of a conscience about what's being done, but he's worse.
I don't think even in the books, Ness, back me up, did Mao never even had the brain wipe. Mao is just a straight up stone cold.
He's all the worse because he has a moment of regret about what's being done to the children, and he says,
"Go ahead and do it." But then he changed his mind.
Yeah, so he's worse in my mind.
Yes,
I agree,
because he still has the capability. So on to Anna.
But that's kind of a detour because we're not even talking about Amos at that point.
That's fine. It still relates to the larger conversation. Yeah. Okay. So Amos and Anna, again, and that's a different relationship than Amos has had with Naomi or with Holden or with Prax, because I feel like Prax was more like a I need to protect this guy relationship, which is related to the way he feels about both Holden and Naomi. But I feel like Anna is more of a this is the moral compass and somebody with strong ethics that I can follow.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And
so it's almost like a next level in his development of his own moral compass by mimicking someone who has that higher calling to serve others, to serve mankind. So
yeah, because I feel like Anna, we might see her flaws, but in Amos's view, she is objectively good. He is never cowed to any sort of religion or anything like that, but in his mind she is just going out of her way to do for others, and he sees that and he appreciates it, and the fact that he can see that in her and value that in her, I feel like that is more of a testament to my original point that he's not oblivious. He's completely not like unable to appreciate good or motivations in others. Like he sees that she just wants to do her best. And we can picture Anna as someone who was like raised by a loving family and raised within a church environment and raised with all these beautiful morals, and you know, she has this beautiful family, and you know, but if he had been raised differently, wouldn't he maybe have gravitated towards the values that she embodies?
I think that's a very interesting question, Courtney. And it's, of course, impossible to answer. You know, we can't know who we would or would not be with when you change any experience. But I think Amos maybe has a stronger morality than he gives himself credit for, but he also occasionally just ignores it because it's expedient in the moment, you know?
Well, he's a survivalist. I mean, he knows what's necessary in the moment, and when life mimics the churn he grew up in, he is willing to sacrifice morality to survive, just like his mother was, just like his role model was. I mean, he can value morality. He also can see in a moment what it takes to get out of this alive.
Right. And that is ultimately what he's, that's what the churn always comes down to. The rules of the game change, and you've got to change with it to survive. And
yes,
survive is the last line of that whole thing. And that's
ultimately. And if you are living just for survival, morality doesn't even come into it. I mean, thank God none of us have ever had to live like just to survive. I've been raised with morality. I just, I don't know. Amos' morality wasn't even a question in his upbringing. It was literally just, what do I have to do to live until tomorrow?
Right.
Yeah. As a privilege. Comes with
it's
privilege.
A luxury. Yeah, it really is. I'm privileged to have been raised with it, but if I was raised like Amos, who knows? It doesn't mean he doesn't see it as something to put on a pedestal. It just means that it's not the top priority when you have to live through this moment.
Well, and it was his way of life. That's all he knew for.
Yeah, but it would be extremely easy for someone who kind of went through what he went through to just say, the hell with all that. I'm going to live my life purely in survival and not care about any of that other stuff. But he's aware enough about morality and knows that he wants to sort of pursue that again, he made sure that he's around people who will sort of guard the better angels of his nature and allow him to move in that direction. So I'd give him a lot of credit for that.
Yes. Right. So all these people out there in the fandom who are saying that he is autistic and incapable of perceiving a human conscience or emotion, I don't see that. I don't. I think he is so much deeper than that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that Anna is, again, like Naomi's chaotic good. Prax, Anna has not just a strongly developed morality, but a really strong understanding of society and its ethics as well. And her training and professional experience as a pastor have made her a character who sees it as her job to empathize. And Amos is a character who is not used to having people empathize with him. especially not, I mean, the people that he eventually chooses to become close with eventually learn to empathize with him. People like Naomi and Holden and Alex, but but Anna, as somebody who comes into his life and is immediately being empathetic towards everyone, is probably not something he's ever seen in his life.
Right. I'm quite sure that there's not a lot of missionaries that make it down to his neck of the woods growing up.
Probably not.
Yes, and even within the series, I mean, one of the things that's amazing about this series is like not even everyone who is a missionary is actually like working toward the common good. You know, we have that father, what's his name, who is completely just hypocritically working for fame. Yeah, Anna is 100% just trying to do what's best for everyone, and he sees the difference. He is able to discern the difference between Anna, who just wants to help people, and this like televangelist who just wants ratings and everybody look at me and send me your money. And, you know, he is able to see through that, and he sees the good in Anna. And she is actually, I mean, you know, there's a lot of gray in this series, but I would argue that despite minor flaws, Anna is actually fairly white, you know, like fairly good overall.
Right.
And
well, she is actually doing that type of outreach with unregistered people.
Yes.
Maybe, you know,
and she
sees people
it.
like where Amos came from every day, and she leverages what she has, what little bit of, you know, use she has to the government to help those people. You know, her reward is fund my clinic for, you know, X
and
number.
Even in Clarissa Mao, who threatens her friend, who she cares about, she still tries to see the good in her. And I think that that brings Amos to try to see the good in her. And I think that the Amos and Clarissa relationship is so compelling. Like I love their friendship, and it still has more to be seen in the TV series. I can't wait for you guys to see where that goes. And I am just like, I think he gets that from Anna. He learns that from Anna. He's constantly trying to not just see, like, let these people who are making good moral decisions make decisions for him, but he's trying to learn from them so that he can make better decisions for himself. And I am just so excited for where his character is going, and I feel like his character development is among the best in the series. Sorry,
you can see how Anna is trying so hard to redeem Clarissa, and he can empathize with Clarissa. So he sees a lot of himself in her, even though they come from completely different backgrounds.
Right.
Yes.
Different backgrounds. He can see so much of himself in her, and to see the work that Anna is trying to do with her to redeem her gives him some type of maybe inner redemption himself, that he is redeemable. Even in his worst moment, he is worthy of love, and he is redeemable himself.
Yeah,
he's not always, he doesn't always have to be that guy.
Which I think just be Timmy. The fact that he learns that from Anna right before the end of the season leads up to that very last sort of interaction they have together, where Ashford has sent people to kill them, and Anna has that great speech about hate is a burden, we don't have to carry it with us. And Amos chooses that moment to be like, I'm never going to let anybody hurt you, which, you know, warms my murder, snuggle, loving heart. Because, and that was probably maybe not the moment, but that is a strong moment in his development that made me go, I just love this character. I love how complicated and how deep and layered he is. Yeah. Anybody excuse me, sorry. Anybody got anything else to say about Amos and Anna?
No, but I just have to say it's insane that there's so much to talk about Amos that it's like we're getting near the end of the stream and we didn't even touch on everything he goes through in season 4, which is
we'll go ahead and keep going.
No, please do, John, because breaking it down by seasons at this point, I've disconnected from like the season by season.
All good.
So please
we're basically up to season 4. We're probably going to go a little over 2 hours today, y'all, because I think his season 4 arc deserves to be talked about. But I think I might pitch it to one of y'all while I run to the restroom for a second. So,
all right, well, I got you.
So season 4.
Yeah, Nessie, take it away.
After I just said I'm not up on season 4. So Ness, go.
Amos meets his mirror twin, I like to look at, as he is in conflict with Mercury the entire season.
Yes.
I mean, I'm just gonna love Amos this season just from the trailer with that little bit we get between them, and I think someday you and I are going to get bloody and just the response, I'm free right now. It's like I knew it was gonna be a killer Amos season just from that. And
2 apex predators walk into a bar. It's kind of how the scene starts, and it's just they have both lived maybe not parallel us, they come from different backgrounds, but they both have that survivalist mentality that has been drilled into them. If Mercury has come through, worked for security for many, his entire career, and been in situations where if he did not act in certain ways, he and his people would not have survived the situation. So it's a very militaristic background. And Amos is coming from a similar but different background where he has been protecting his people. So you have 2 survivalists who are willing to do whatever needs to be done to take care of their people.
It's such a fascinating look because you're right. They're not exact mirror images because they haven't had the same experiences. But in terms of like what they're trying to do, it's fascinating to look at how they overlap and how they differ because you've got 2 people who are basically trying to do what they feel is the best to protect those who are following them, but they're approaching it from such completely different places. And Amos is everything comes from, even if he doesn't fully believe in his own moral compass and he latches on other people, but he does have a moral compass, whether he thinks so or not. Whereas Mercury has just left all of that behind. He has no moral compass.
Mercury is lawful neutral. Like
he literally just follows orders. He completely exists. He has learned that the only way to survive is to follow the orders of the people above him. So he exists to serve the company, and he will follow orders in order to survive. And Amos could have sunk into that track. He could easily still have survived just following the original Amos Burton's orders. And he probably would still be living in Baltimore, but he might have made his way up the chain. He could have followed that path. He chose to think for himself. He chose to step outside that box. And Murtaugh is just completely has no thoughts of his own, is just trying to survive by working for the company. And I mean, it's worked for him thus far, but I don't know. He has no thoughts of his own.
Leaf, you may be right. He might be lawful evil. I haven't given a whole lot of thought to it. He definitely is on the lawful side.
If we assume that the corporation is evil, which, I mean,
it's not a
he
stretch.
is following the letter of the law. The United Nations gave them the permit to be there.
Crosses the line.
100%. I mean, I'm totally playing devil's advocate here,
I would
but
put him in the lawful evil category myself.
I think Miles Curtis Watson brings up a really excellent point. Plotting to murder Holden for personal profit. You're right. I didn't think about it, but you're right. He pretty much is lawful evil. Thanks for that.
But is it personal profit or is it the best for the company?
But at least on the television,
which will he will profit.
He's definitely like, I'm getting 1% and I'm going to be super rich. But make sure Holden doesn't.
I just have to stop for a second because you did actually call him Murtaugh instead of Murtry.
Oh, I'm right. It's Murphy.
Sorry, Outlander. See, I keep telling you, we need to do the Outlander.
That's such a beautiful Amos thing to do. So it was.
That was my favorite when he kept calling him by the wrong name.
Like Murphy or Murray or.
Mm-hmm. I do love that.
But I wondered if you were watching Outlander, and that was the reason why you went to that. Because
I have been. I love those books. I love that show. You know me. We've had this conversation. We don't need to have it on Steven's stream, but I will come back at you for this again because we will be doing an Outlander conversation. I will be your resident book nerd, just like I've been for Steven for Expanse.
Well, because I know we've talked about doing an Outlander stream on here, but whether that happens or not, I am totally going to break down season by season on my channel.
We can do that
because I definitely.
I'm in, but we don't need to promote ourselves on Steven's channel to do that. I will do that though. I will make you do that.
Absolutely. You promote away once we get to the end.
No, I'm not. That was not my intention. It was just a Freudian slip.
That's
or
okay.
Maybe a Weinian slip.
I'm always talking about what my friends are doing. I'm very here to support you guys. But let's get through the Amos conversation, and then we'll do commercials.
I'm not trying to do commercials. I swear. That was just a slip.
I do love the you were talking about the way that Murtry and Amos are parallels, but like in some ways they're very parallel, and in some ways they're absolutely perpendicular to each other. And I think it is a really excellent way of writing Amos's character to have that sort of funhouse mirror in Murtry, because it lets you see, okay, yeah, they're both willing to be violent and they both read people very well. They but like in the ways they're different is what makes Amos such a fantastic and lovable character.
And we don't have like a full backstory for Murtry. Like we know some of the things he's been through in adulthood, some of the things he's gone through with the corporation, but we have no idea how he was raised. We have no idea where he came from. Oh, Leaf. I love it.
Yep.
I'm all about it. Lady Leaf.
Right. But the one other thing from season 4 that is like really fantastic about Amos in particular is his response to losing his vision and the way the psychology of what he's experiencing in that moment, because we've literally never seen Amos afraid of anything until he goes temporarily blind, and then he is terrified. And I'm getting goosebumps right now just thinking about about what that says about his psychology, about his youth, because he was flashing back to some dark basement somewhere where awful things were done to him and he could not escape. So Amos, who isn't afraid of anything, is afraid of the dark. And like, the dark can't hurt you, but you can understand why when you start to dig into his PTSD, which we don't have all the information about what he went through. We don't have a whole lot of details and specifics from any time before the setting of the churn. I mean, there's a little bit of hints here and there, but we don't know exactly. But clearly it was really terrible and it affected him on such a level that he lashes out against Holden. He's trying to teach the slugs a lesson with the blowtorch. He wanders off trying to get himself killed just so he can have some degree of agency and control, because he is mentally transported back to that place where he had none whatsoever.
Which just adds such beautiful resonance to when the situation is resolved, and his reaction to Holden is complete and utter shock and surprise. He says, "You actually did it," you know, and I just have to wonder if that's going to add an even further level of trust and love between them, because he was brought to his darkest place, afraid that was it, and in fact courting death just to get out of that place, and Holden was able to rescue him from it. And yeah, so I'd love to see if that just strengthens their bond even more.
Well, I'm sure we'll cover it when we get to the Holden conversation eventually, but you know, he's got a lot of Messiah imagery and themes kind of wrapped around him. You know, great white savior, blah blah blah. It's a trope, but like, it's definitely, I think that definitely reinforces it, especially for Amos, because you know, it's for those of you that follow Hero's journey, they were literally in the underworld. You know, so that's like one of the big, you know, swinging moments in a lot of the Hero's journey story is that passage through the underworld. But Amos gets out the other side because Holden saves them all.
Well, he says in, I believe it was season 2, when he's having that conversation with Prax. Prax asks him, why isn't he afraid? And he's like, I haven't been afraid since I was 5.
Mm-hmm.
So everything all of his fear had been removed from him. He had gone through whatever the worst thing he could possibly imagine at that time.
And we know what that was.
You know, we kind of can infer what that was. And then he's afraid again. And that just puts him right back to that moment where he was 5 years old. And that's how he kind of acts in those scenes. He is very, very childlike in, you know, the way he's moving, the way he's, you know, handling, you know, explaining things and talking about things. It's very, very childlike in a way. And then to have that one, he's got that one little boy in the season 4 that he's trying to keep safe as well. You know, he's lost his parents and he's alone and he's blind in the dark as well with Amos. And it's, you know, it's just very touching, the scenes that he has with him, that he's trying to help, you know, he's trying to help someone else along at the same time that he is undergoing one of his worst childhood traumas, reliving that. And
right. Well, it just says something about the nature of what's important to him. You know, Amos has his sort of tribalism instincts to protect those closest to him, but that instinct to protect a child, like, he didn't know this kid. Mm-mm. He didn't know the kids they saved at the end of, you know, halfway through season 3. But who's making their breakfast cereal at the end of that episode? my man Amos. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's been a couple of things brought up in the chat. Padar was talking about the speech to Prax after he beats up the chicken guy. And you're right. It's a great window into Amos's personal psychology. He read the guy, he understood what needed to happen, he knew what would get results, and he got results.
Yeah.
Quickly.
Yeah.
And Ness was saying, that he hasn't felt fear since he was 5. And I think it was Prax that said, like, even on the show, like, I wish, I wish I hadn't felt fear since I was 5. And Amos's immediate response was, no.
No, you don't.
No, you don't. Because what would you have to go through?
Right.
Early childhood.
So
that could be so traumatic that nothing could affect you.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. When even death is a release because he would have agency.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Miles Curtis.
My poor murder snuggles.
Says, okay, I think he is talking about Amos being blind and Holden finding him. Really unexpected, poignant moment. Agreed. And then huge respect for Holden in that moment for continuing to reach toward him to try to reach out to his friend after Amos was throwing swings at him, and let's face it, you don't want Wes Chatham throwing hands at you. That guy's scary. But yeah, Holden clearly loves and cares for Amos. That's his brother at this point, and Amos is in his darkest place. And we've all lashed out at loved ones when we were in a bad place before. So I find that to be very, very relatable. But he's also like, I don't know. I lost my train of thought.
Sorry, my response is not to you, but to the comment you put up right now by Padar. Like, it is so unfortunately true to Amos's upbringing that, like, literally his mother was not just pimped out as a woman, but pimped out as a mother, so that as soon as her son was old enough, he was unfortunately just introduced into that life, and they called it a stable. I mean, can you even imagine, like, a child who basically is completely off the grid? He couldn't even apply for what we would consider, basic services. He was off basic, so he wasn't even eligible for welfare. He had to earn his keep from the earliest possible age that he might be appealing to the lowest form of human being.
Yeah. As Burton called him, he was second generation chattel.
Yes.
Now, he wasn't even a person. He was just a second generation nothing. So that's the amount that they cared for these people, was that they were not people. They were just chattel.
The potential to earn, and you were a drain up until that point.
You were either an asset or you were a loss. You were just a mark in a column on a ledger sheet.
And so from the first moment that he could be valuable to someone, he was pimped out for whatever he was worth. Yeah. It's heartbreaking. It's like, it makes me sick to even think about. As a mother, I can't.
I will then just move us along.
Yes, please. Let's move on.
The last relationship I want to make sure we talk about, at least someone, is Amos and Way. Because I found it to be very interesting as well, how he could have that sort of relationship and attraction to to someone who was obviously like him in a lot of ways herself. She was not the female Amos, but like she definitely was willing to be violent and was being, she had her tribalistic leanings where she was just trying to take care of her people. And I think that's part of what attracted them to each other, but also ultimately what led to them not being able to come to an agreement in the end of the season.
Right.
I have to say that I love what the show did with their relationship, because for me, it was very satisfying to see him able to have a connected relationship with someone that he was also having sex with, and he still in the books is incapable of that. So for him to have that friendship with Wei and care about her and share that physical connection, that was really huge. That was major character development for him. And I was thrilled to see it because I want that for him. Unfortunately, in the books, it still hasn't happened. He did feel some connection to her the same way, or maybe not on the same level, but similarly to the way that he relates to Naomi and cares about her and very much wants what's best for her, but hasn't quite been able to connect physically, even though he clearly has some attachment. In the books, the physical connection never happened, but the fact that it did happen in the show was sort of nice for me to see, because it's him overcoming a hurdle in which he has never in his entire life since childhood, and again, because he grew up in a childhood of prostitution, ever been able to have that level of emotional connection to someone that he's having that physical relationship with. So I was thrilled.
Yeah, but then how heartbreaking is it at the end when they find themselves at odds? He still is so Amos in that moment when it clicks in his head, she's going to stand in my way. Her life ends. He ends her life immediately.
Mm-hmm. And it makes it more compelling on the show.
Yes, I think you're right.
I mean, in the books, you can see inside his head, so you can understand how much it means to him and how much it pains him to have to take her out to protect someone he loves. But in the show, you cannot see inside his thought process. So it is so much more compelling to know that he finally bridged that gap with someone, that he finally found that emotional and physical connection where he could, have sex mean, if not making love, like at least have it somehow relate to an emotional connection that he never, ever, ever had before. Since we could maybe argue Lydia, although he was so young.
That's a weird relationship.
So wrong. But, this, even in the books, the fact that he truly wants to relate to this woman, that he truly cares about her, and he still has to kill her, is very compelling. But it's compelling because we can see his thought processes.
Right.
In the show, I feel like the fact that they took it to that next level just makes us understand on a whole other level what this means to him, that he had to make this choice and he chose between his family and the person he was.
But the thing that makes Amos so great is that, like, he never did the math. Like, he told Wei, I'm coming for your boss. Don't be there when I get there, because there was never any doubt in his own mind which way he was going to go if it came right down to it. Now, Way maybe didn't fully grasp that, which is why she got herself killed. But like, that's why there was no hesitation. His mind was already made up. If you stand between me and Holden, I'm going to kill you. I don't care if you're the woman I'm sleeping with or anything. Which brings me back to, that relationship that had developed between Holden and Amos up to that point. It's just so great. I love it. Miles Curtis Watson. I'm sorry. We've been talking for over 2 hours, so.
No, he did care about Lydia. But
yeah, but like Lydia.
But Miles, Lydia, I don't know. I mean, she cared about him. She definitely cared about him on a level.
Yeah, but she's also like a mother figure, which makes
a mother figure who, from a young age, while he was in prostitution, still had sexual. I don't think. I mean, I don't know. I'm an actual mother, and I can't even imagine that those two things sync up.
Right.
Having that level of emotional control over a young child. I mean, I'm a teacher. Like,
yeah.
No, you don't.
It's a little squishy.
Go there.
It's a lot squishy.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that. Like, I've never been in their situation, but
fair enough, Miles. Read the chart. It's really worth it. It's fantastic.
It is worth it. But I don't know. I don't feel like your mom's friend who is also in prostitution with your mom should be having sex with her child.
Right. It's not a healthy relationship. They care about each other, but it doesn't make it healthy or good for either one of them.
I mean, again, I haven't been through their life, but
try not to judge.
Too much.
Okay, so let me ask you guys this, and the chat, bring up anything else that we need to talk about Amos. We've been going for over 2 hours now. It's going to be time to wrap this up pretty quickly. So I'm going to ask the chat if you've got stuff that you want to bring up, that you want to talk about Amos. Now is a great time to drop that in there. And I'm going to also say that for me, I have thoroughly enjoyed this. Like, I love picking apart characters. I love picking apart their psyche, their mentality, and obviously with the
and I love you guys.
But like with the mentality like Amos's, there's just so much meat on that bone to pick apart. We could probably go for another few hours if I was capable of streaming for that long, which you guys know I am really not.
I just want to say once more, just taking in the full scope of the Amos Holden relationship, the fact that it goes from, it's one of the episodes from season 1. I think where they're the one where they're about to be potentially boarded and they're basically at gunpoint with each other.
That's
and
episode 2.
Was that?
Oh! Boarded by Martians?
No.
Oh, are you talking about?
It's the Donkey Balls episode.
Okay, I'm not sure exactly which episode that is. It's like,
but they're basically at gunpoint to the point where Holden's even willing to, or he's at least threatening to shoot Amos, and the fact that it goes from that point where they're essentially willing to kill each other to Amos not even thinking twice about choosing Holden over an intimate relationship that he's developed is just amazing. It's seeing the scope and breadth of that relationship and how it evolved is just, again, as you were saying earlier, Stephen, it's something particularly between men that I think we don't get to see a whole lot. And and it's one of the best parts of the show for me. their
Well
bond.
said.
It really is.
Well said. Anybody else? Courtney or Nessie got any final thoughts about Amos?
I just have to apologize because John was being very serious and making incredibly insightful observations, which I totally agreed with. But my facial expressions were completely related to our lovely
Again,
friends in
Courtney,
the
you
chat
bring up this
who
way
have kept me so entertained. And so if you saw me actually unable to contain my laughing out loud,
It's because
it was yet again because of our friends who are distracting me this whole time. But I love them for it. And I love you guys for being here. And I love you for making this so much more fun for all of us, because I know so many of us are just like stuck home right now for quarantine and only getting our social outlets out by interacting with each other. So I am so happy to be hanging out with all of you, and I am enjoying every single bit that you're contributing to this live stream. This is not just the four of us. This is all of you. And I'm so glad you're here and you are making this so much fun for me. So thank you.
Right on.
Oh,
Nessie, you got any last things to say about Amos?
Amos is reason number one to watch The Expanse, just to pick apart his.
I mean, I'll say Wes is reason number one to watch. Amos is reason number one to read. Wes is reason number one to watch. That man,
oh, Courtney.
He's delicious. I'm sorry. Please don't tell my husband that I said this, but
I'm
that
gonna
man.
get on the internet right now.
There he is. Oh yeah.
How could you not? He's.
Hold on. Let me get that comment out of the way so we can see. Look at the biceps, that jawline. He's got pretty eyes too.
He really does.
And he's an adorable, like, good-natured person in real life. I want good things for him as an actor as well.
Yes.
Right on.
Don't watch the topic.
See, the chat is what makes it worth it. These are the
Agreed.
people. These are the people we do it for.
Yeah.
I know other people watch after the fact, but the people who are here with us right now.
Everybody in the chat does have a certain level of a certain
love you guys.
awesomeness to what.
I'm so glad you're here.
Morty. Paydar.
Yeah, Paydar keeps trying to mess with me, but he hasn't thrown me off yet. We're okay. We're still cool. I still love you, Paydar.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm pretty much done at this point. I don't have anything else to add about Amos. We've touched on everything I can think of. I'm sure we could probably go for another long time if we just started talking. But
I mean, I could chat with you guys forever, but I have been, like I said, doing the whole like teaching remotely thing all day, and
yeah. So we're going to try to get you off the screen too, Courtney, since you've been doing it all day. But yeah, so as OTDA says, everybody hit the like button. That would be awesome. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Now, we don't always talk about The Expanse, but we are going to be at least once a month doing another character breakdown until season 5 comes out. So that gives us enough time to probably finish the Rossi crew and then cover people like Miller and Abasarala, maybe some Sergeant Draper. So yeah, we'll.
You all know who you really want to talk about.
Yeah,
I know who you want to talk about.
Yeah, and there's no guarantees who we're doing next, but I think it might. I'm not sure what method we'll use to choose. Miller would be fantastic, though. He's a great character. So that having been, yeah, Alex votes for, or Paydar votes for Alex. Probably Alex votes for Paydar, too. Ashford would be an awesome character to cover, too.
much for
he's a little bit smaller in impact on the show just because he doesn't come around till halfway through the third season. But like,
your resident book nerd could talk about him.
But he is and I know that in the books he's a little more one note. He's sort of like combined.
That is true.
He's kind of combined with other characters for the television show, and I find his television show character to be very interesting and very compelling.
Oh yeah,
this is one series that I do not hate the changes that they've made from book to show. I mean, they've combined some of the best aspects of characters that I love and created like more visually compelling characters, because shows obviously have to have like conservation of characters. They have to hire actors who are going to fill these roles, and they want to give them the maximum amount of screen time. And I think that this show has done a beautiful job.
Agreed. The show is still in its first 4 seasons. Give it time. You'll hate some changes.
I'm sure I will eventually. I mean, I defended
as long as that spoiler
for a long time
actually happens, I'm gonna be happy.
Regardless, I love these books. I'll talk about them forever, whether I'm saying good things or bad. And John will just have to put up with it.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, guys, that's the idea. We will be doing more Expanse coverage again, at least once a month. We will be probably doing character studies until season 5 comes out, and then we'll be covering the show itself.
Bam.
Yep. And as we did last year when season 4 comes out, we'll probably do it more than once a month. We'll probably get pretty intensely into it for a little while. So yeah, please like the video, please subscribe, and come back and watch the other stuff. Next week, I hope I have an I Know That Nerd. We'll see. Fingers crossed. Week after that is
somebody better sign up.
Oh, somebody
out there.
I'll find somebody. Just the person that I've been trying to get has not given me a solid yes yet, but that's okay.
Well, so far, everyone you have gotten, I mean, maybe besides myself, has been a complete pillar of our community, has been like an incredible. If you guys have not watched his I Know That Nerd, you are missing out. His entire I Know That Nerd series has been like the most amazing, like I said, maybe beside myself, people in this community. Like, seriously, check the I Know That Nerd series out.
Man, Courtney, like I don't need to sell my own stuff. I just need to get you to sell my stuff.
Well, that's why I'm your Samwise, baby.
Right? Padar, that's hilarious. So next week, I Know That Word Nerd. Week after that, Duncan Egg.
Padar is my favorite, and I've never met him in real life. I don't know him. I don't we don't follow each other on Twitter that I know of. But somehow this man just gives me shit every single time I do this, and I love him for it.
Padar, I would never forgive you for this.
No, he's hilarious. I love him.
God.
Yeah, but he's spoiling everything. Okay.
No, he's the best. He's hilarious. He brings me so much smirky joy.
Okay. I'm going to get through this in part, though. I promise you.
Sorry.
I know that nerd. Duncan Egg, retro review. Those are the next 3 weeks coming up. All right, Courtney, go ahead.
No, I don't even have anything else to say.
John,
just tune into Steven because he brings me all the joy.
Yes. I wouldn't have you any other way. You know that. But, John, you and Nessie have something coming up working together this week, don't you? Let the people know where they can find you.
Yes. This coming Thursday on John Webster Film We will be talking the first season of HBO's Rome. If you guys have not watched it before, correct that immediately so you can take part in the discussion. It's phenomenal. This was the show that was very much the precursor for Game of Thrones on HBO. It didn't last as long, unfortunately, because a lot of shows at the time weren't really given the opportunity to spread their full wings, but it's a phenomenal show, especially this first season. It's tremendous. So please, if you have the time, catch up and watch the first season and then join us. It's going to be a great time. I can't wait. And then the week after that, you'll be getting your dose of my Kira fanboying, because I'll be watching Pride and Prejudice and talking about that.
So, yeah, I just dropped a link to John's channel in the chat. That link is also in the description of this video. I don't guess you have created a stream for that yet, have you, John?
No, not yet.
Okay. But when he does, you'll tweet it out. I'll retweet it. But that will be this Thursday. What time?
At 2:00 p.m. Eastern.
Okay, 2 p.m. Eastern this Thursday.
Don't miss it. John is not good at self-promotion. So if you see it, don't slack on it. Don't assume that it's going to come up 10 minutes later, because he's not that guy. He's not. I'm his friend, and I have missed some of the best stuff he's done because he does not just blast himself. So catch the link, follow him, subscribe, whatever you got to do.
Subscribe.
Because otherwise you will miss out. And it's worth being there.
Let me throw this out here, because I noticed, like Betsy says she doesn't have HBO. If any of you guys have Amazon Prime, the show is available on there, so you can watch it that way.
It's free.
So go ahead and catch it that way. And also, I want to throw this out here too, because it's up on my channel, so I might as well promote it. It's a silly little video that I did last year. If you guys want to check it out, it was basically my post Con of Thrones little short film. It's about 1.5 minutes long. I did it with some of my Funko Pop toys. So check that out. It's basically Funko, Boromir, and Ned Stark fighting over me for my fan love of Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings. So, it's just a goofy little thing, but if you guys want to check it out, it's also on my channel.
Nice. Well, I think that's it, y'all. Thanks for
how about Nessie's new endeavor? Can we please
I'm sorry.
my girl some love?
Jeez, Steven.
Courtney. Okay. I was trying to get through it all, but every time I brought up one thing, Courtney had to say like 5 things about that one thing. I love you, sister. You are the best.
Sorry, but we can't close this without acknowledging that my girl is branching out on her own, and she is intellectual and intelligent and amazing, and I can't wait to see what she does next. And she is like John in that she's humble, so I feel like it's my job to be her cheerleader a little bit.
What did I say? Nessie's got a thing. Tell us all about it.
I don't know.
I've got a channel. It's got content on it. The inaugural live stream was all about Garth the Green Hand, and there was some very excellent new connections that were made on that stream. So if you love A Song of Ice and Fire and you like getting into the nitty gritty, the backstory, the mythology on things, you might want to check that out. So yes, that's what I have up there. And I'm not sure how often I will have content, but I'm hoping to get maybe another one up before, with maybe not this week, but the following week.
She's too modest. As far as first guests go, she had Crowfood's daughter, Amanda, and Lady Shar, who are amazing and as brilliant as my Nessie. I can't even wait. I can't even wait to see what you are going to come out with, my love.
And I've got 2 other guests that I'm talking to back channels. If any of you were at Con of Thrones last year, I was on a panel with Emma Smith and Bron Steris, and we did a panel on unicorns and elephants and forestry laws. So I'm trying to get the band back together and do a stream to reprise that, because 40 minutes, let's face it, was not nearly enough, and the sound quality was not that great. So I'd like to try to get those guys back together. It's just depending on what their time schedule is, and if we can work it out. If not, I've got other things in mind that have just been brewing for a while. So
yeah, cool.
You have been brewing major thoughts for years, my love. I cannot wait to see what is going to come out of your brain onto our screens.
it might be a little scary.
I just dropped a link to Nessie's channel in the chat, and that link is also in the description of the video too. So yeah, go subscribe to their channels. More content coming. Again, on Here Be Dragons, we're a little bit more focused on like nerdy pop culture stuff. And these guys have stuff that they want to talk about that's outside that scope. So they've got their own projects, and I will likely appear on their channels as well at some point in the future. I've already been on John's channel, but you got some great stuff coming up, both of you, and I look really forward to it. Courtney, do you have anything coming up?
Oh, honey, I'm a teacher, so I am figuring out during this whole quarantine thing how to teach remotely. So yes, I do have my own channel, but unfortunately it is not on the deep intellectual level that we are all trying to reach on your channel. I'm trying to teach to young children. So I don't even necessarily want my friends from this fandom to think that they can watch those, because they will just see me acting silly. It's not that cute.
So don't go watch Courtney's content.
Yeah, don't follow me. I mean, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at Courtney Mazza1, and I run the largest Game of Thrones group on Facebook if you really want to go to a realm of ice and fire. But honestly, my whole thing is don't follow me on YouTube.
Well, there you go.
It's just for children, and you will not find it as intellectually stimulating as what we do here.
All right, y'all. I think that's the end of the stream, though. We got a good half hour over, 2.5 hours as opposed to 2. So you get a little extra today.
Oh, it's so worth it, because we could not talk about season 4 Amos. I mean,
right? Had to. There was still meat on that bone. We had to get there. But yeah. So to everybody who came out and took part in the chat, we love you guys. Thanks for coming. To our guests, Courtney, always lovely to have you. To my wonderful co-hosts, John and Nessie, you make this channel better simply by being here every week. And yeah, so thanks to everyone. I love our little corner of the community that we've put together. I love seeing the same people in the chat week in, week out. And these are a highlight of my week. I get to talk about the stuff I love with people I care about. And I can't thank each and every one of you enough for making that a possibility. So yeah, thanks. And I hope to see you all back next week. But you know what it is. Until then, peace and be excellent to each other.
Bye, Dan.
Thank you.